Mr. Chairman, the Vice President of the Economic and Social Council, distinguished committee members, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to be with you to deliver the following statement at the opening of the 10th session of the United Nations Committee of Experts on Public Administration on behalf of Under-Secretary Zukang, who regrets not being able to be with you in person today. This year, we will address the question, how do we achieve real results in public governance and thereby improve the quality of human life and ensure progress for all? Specifically, we will consider this question through the lens of the internationally agreed development goals, including the Millennium Development Goals. Special attention will be given to social protection for vulnerable populations and to public governance in post-conflict and post-disaster countries. The committee will also consider how the United Nations system can better assist countries with public sector performance management. Ladies and gentlemen, the world continues to face numerous development challenges, of which I can only mention a few. Some 31% of the employed population in developing regions subsists on less than $1.25 or less a day. 16% of people in developing countries remain undernourished. Over 42 million people have been uprooted by conflict or persecution. Funding gaps threaten progress against a range of infectious diseases, including measles, pneumonia, malaria, and HIV/AIDS. The conversion of forests to other uses has resulted in a net global loss of 5.2 million hectares per year over the last decade, despite many ambitious tree planting programs. While there has been progress in rural areas, half the population of developing regions still lacks access to basic sanitation facilities. This meeting takes place at a challenging time for many governments affected by the long reach of the global financial and economic crisis, especially in constraining fiscal space and the scope for government initiative and intervention. This situation creates a dilemma for public policy makers and administrators, challenged by short-term recovery needs versus long-term investment requirements. Many governments would like to invest for the long term, but instead they are now being forced to decide which offices to close, which services and benefits to cut, which workers to dismiss, and which taxes to increase. Will governments manage to find a balance to accelerate and sustain economic recovery and produce the results people want at an affordable prices? It is never easy. Two other challenges they face relate to items on your agenda today: how to design governance systems for results in post-conflict and post-disaster countries, and how to ensure social protection for vulnerable populations. Social and economic fragility in the aftermath of a conflict or disaster enhances the need for efficiency, transparency, and accountability. Likewise, without these critical elements, vulnerable populations are at risk of exclusion. The expectation of dual accountability to both citizens and the donor community can also exacerbate an already very complex task. During the 9th session last year, we heard that the global economic crisis and the financial reform processes that followed put public governance and administration at the forefront of development concerns. Furthermore, last December, the General Assembly adopted a resolution on the international financial system and development. This resolution called for good governance along with national ownership of policies and strategies. There are compelling reasons for a focus on governance, which is necessary to reach all, not just some, of our development objectives. Better developmental governance is needed to achieve the internationally agreed development goals, including the Millennium Development Goals, for sustainable development to take root, to mitigate the many disasters facing the world, many of which are man-made, including the financial crisis and its many consequences, and to strengthen social protection, especially for the poor and vulnerable. I might add that Mr. Shah has just returned from a long trip to Africa, and he was very impressed by the finance ministers at the conference of the Economic Conference on Africa in Addis Ababa, where it was strongly emphasized that the role of government in sub-Saharan Africa has been particularly lacking in recent decades, owing to poor advice which was received by foreign agencies. Effective performance management improves results. It also strengthens institutions and leads to better public services, especially when citizens are engaged in monitoring and evaluating program outcomes. Sound, transparent financial management is part of the equation and a vital ingredient in the global fight against corruption, from which no government is immune. Corruption impedes economic development, undermines stability, further disenfranchises the poor, and erodes public trust. Improved public governance can surely help. Last year, the committee made a number of suggestions on how to make governance more responsive to development concerns. This year, you'll be called once again, using your expertise as CEPA members, to suggest concrete ways of strengthening national public sector administration to improve human well-being. Here are some questions which you may wish to consider as you deliberate. How do we ensure broad citizens' engagement and monitor the inclusion of disadvantaged groups in development? How far does the public realm extend? And what do we mean when we refer to results? How does one assess the impact of regulation and administration on government performance? How can public officials help legislators make informed choices and write laws that promote sustainable development? What role is there for information and communications technology, including e-government development? Your concrete recommendations on these matters can have a significant influence on public sector performance and the achievement of development for all. Most immediately, you might suggest ways of shaping the United Nations Programme on Public Administration, as well as activities of the wider United Nations system to help us maximize our own relevance and effect. As many of you may know, the United Nations budget has been reduced for the past year and once again for the coming year. And so a very major concern of the Secretary General is doing more with less in the face of these budget cuts. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, it is you, the people in this room, who know best the importance of our public institutions in meeting the world's developmental challenges. I thank you all for the serious minds and committed hearts with which I know you will approach these discussions, and wish you a successful, productive session. Thank you for your attention.
CEPA members, thank you, Mr. Jomo, with much gratitude for your thoughts and your statements. And His Excellency, we have appreciated very much your encouraging presence at this inauguration of our meeting. Thank you for your presence.